Hello again. Just doing a quick update on the China spy scandal, or the collapse of the alleged spying, as it correctly is, I suppose. I had a look through the witness statements that were published by Starmer's office, and I put the links into the description. Now, if you look at the first one, it sort of goes into some of the alleged activity, and what really struck me about that was really how spurious it was, and almost just conjecture, really. And I kind of looked at it and thought, obviously, if it's true, I couldn't condone it, but I would immediately think that the UK is probably, as we speak, and indeed our other countries, engaged in more malicious activity against China and others than what's been stated in the first witness statement. But I think the problems come from the second statement, because you've got some extraordinary contradictions. I think there's no doubt when you look at both of them, and also the document that I published from Michelle Donnellan relating to Huawei, there's no doubt that there was this term of being a threat to national security, or whether you translate that into an enemy is up to you. But there's no doubt language like that was used by the previous government. But I just want to focus on a couple of bits on the second witness statement, which essentially what it covers the period from it covers Collins' impressions from the period December 2021 to February 23, and it was signed off on the 21st of February 2024, so still under the previous government. But look at the language he uses and how contradictory it is. I'll come back to it. So just bear with me. Here it is, the first bit. China is an authoritarian state with different values to the UK. This presents challenges for both the UK and our allies. China and the UK both benefit from bilateral trade and investment, but China also presents the biggest state-based threat to the UK's economic security. What we're essentially saying here, we've got the extraordinary contradiction of China being described as the biggest threat to economic security, but also having beneficial bilateral trading relationships. So I imagine immediately somebody who is defending this case would pick up on that extraordinary contradiction. Let's move on to, it's under point 6 of the second witness statement. It is important for me to emphasise, however, that the government is committed to pursue a positive economic relationship with China. The government believes that the UK must continue to engage with international partners on trade and investment to grow our economy, whilst ensuring that our security and values are not compromised. So in essence, it really, what I said in the book and what I've said in these videos, where the UK is in this absurd position where it's fundamentally too weak to challenge China in any great form, be it militarily or anything else. Almost like a fly on a dragon's back, as it were. And you've seen that when the UK was meddling in Hong Kong and stirring up trouble there with America as well, when China brought out national security laws and just ripped up the joint declaration, because it saw some very malign activity happening in Hong Kong and took measures, and the UK could do nothing effectively. So you're really sort of seeing this in these statements. Now, if you go to the third, which was described as the last witness statement, he uses slightly different language, even though this was dated the 4th of August 2025. So in this, he says, it's important for me to emphasise that the UK government is committed to pursue a positive relationship with China and to strengthen understanding, cooperation and stability. The government's position is that we will cooperate where we can, compete where we need to, and challenge where we must, including on issues of national security. So he seems to drop the economic threat and also the pursuit for bilateral relations there. So it's really, I think the second statement that's the big problem. Those vastly contradictory elements to it, as I said, exactly in the format that I sort of related to in my book, and videos, and these videos saying that the UK is in this ridiculous situation. Because really what you would say if you were defending this, you would say, well, if they're the biggest threat to, if it was the government's conclusion that they're the biggest threat to economic security, then why is it important to have a trading relationship with them? You wouldn't do that. But to put some of this into context, I put another link there, and this relates to the previous video where I discussed the prosecution of I think it was Mr. Parrott in the lead up to World War One, where I think it was alleged that he was engaged in sort of spying and espionage activities in 1912 with Germany, and at that time I don't think really Germany had been described explicitly as an enemy, but was almost certainly a strategic rival. Now, if you look at what I pasted in here, it's got some very interesting data, because it identifies the volume of imports into Germany from Britain and the British Isles and other trading partners as well. And you can see that if you just take Great Britain as they're termed, the term great is yours to acknowledge or not, is there was quite a big drop. There was an absolute drop from these are imports into Germany from 1900 to 1911. It went from 42 million to just under 40.5 million. So there's a bit of drop, absolute and in relative terms. So in terms of their imports, from Great Britain, they went from 14.5 to 8.3%. On the exports, actually Germany's exports to the United Kingdom went up, although they declined in relative terms. So they went from 40,610,000 to 59,985. So just under 57 million. But in terms of the percentage, they dropped from 19.2 to 14%. But in the meantime, if you look at the other countries, if you like, trade was absolutely booming, growing very steadily in both relative and absolute terms between Germany and Russia. And also, so there were very steep gains, and there was also trade increasing in some of the Britain's members of the British Empire as well. So isn't it strange that we we have a situation where trade is at that time was growing between Germany and Russia, and remember the trade before, and I made this point in the book Lost the Race as well, that trade was booming really between Germany, Russia, the Russian Federation and China prior to the war in Ukraine. And you got this very successful sort of nice little trilogy taking place where and they were all complementing each other quite well. And you can see before World War One, we had good trade, good and growing trade between Germany and Russia. And when you think about it, it does make sense, because Germany had a good industrial base and still had. It's been gone back, struggled a bit recently, but before the Ukraine war, Germany had a very powerful industrial base that was envied. And if you marry that with the resource potential of Russian resources, and you put the two together, you've got a very powerful force. And it was recognised, in the run up to World War One, and it was recognised also in the run up to Ukraine. But isn't it strange that we ended up with a war that disrupted that on 2 occasions? It does make you think, doesn't it? Take care.